having girl problems, I feel bad for you, son. I've got 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. If you got some dough, 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. Fix my whole asshole. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. I got the rap patrol on the cat patrol. Those that wanna make sure that my casket's closed. The year's 94 and my trunk is raw. In my rear view is the motherfucking law. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. Bad for you, son. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. 99 problems, but a bitch ain't one. 99.
Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here, coming at you live from my studio / RV dining room, located directly outside the city of Little Port-au-Prince, Ohio, where they're eating the cats and the dogs, apparently. The city formerly known as Springfield, Ohio. Now, folks, I will be your pilot navigator for this shenanigan-infused journey into the mind of this particular garbage can dude. And joining me here tonight is my associate, the host of the Occult Rejects, Nick. Nick, how you doing, bud? Thanks for joining me, bud.
Thank you for asking me on again. I always love podcasting with you, man. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. I always enjoy the conversation. Got a real dandy on deck here. It's a game I like to play from Operation GCD 1.0. Back when I initially did an Operation GCD podcast from circa May of 2016 through about May of 2020, before I had got occupied with some other activities in my life, before I returned to doing Operation GCD 2.0 here about 2 years ago, circa 2 years ago this month, actually. So this is my rehash of the my remake, if you will, Hollywood remake of my 1.0 series of 6 Degrees of Charles Manson.
I like it, your own remake.
Yep, for sure. It's because Charles Manson very much. I mean, there's a lot to be said for the man. I have a lot of ideas about who Charles Manson was, and who he wasn't, and what he did and what he didn't. So a lot of these ideas obviously revolve around the Process Church of the Final Judgment, and that's the image seen in the graphic on the cover art here tonight. That's I saw some folks already commenting that in the chat. That's Genesis Peorich. Someone we've talked about on the Occult Rejects before, relative to the Process Church, the quote unquote neo process movement. One of the founding folks of I don't know if he's a guy or a girl. He's doing that whole transhumanism, genderless thing. He even got, I think he still went by a man, but then he got breast implants. So he's doing that whole Baphomet, which is why the temple of or the Satanic Temple uses that symbol. It's very much embodies the process theology, and that's what Genesis Peorich was doing. So that photo was him as a younger man, before the breast implants. But yeah, they're all wearing the the Manson t-shirts. They got the process symbol on them. So he obviously comes into the story here tonight, but 6 Degrees of Charles Manson is essentially, it's my my ode to the fact that Manson is very much a part of American folklore, if you will. He's a legend throughout American folklore. Obviously he's just on his surface level, he's a man that was convicted for ordering the murder of folks, not necessarily murdering folks. But he's often considered a serial killer, which is a weird kind of concept for someone who hasn't. I'm not saying he's not responsible for creating chaos and terror and essentially, what equates to essentially mind controlling folks through, cults and quote unquote magic, if you will. But nonetheless, it's not the traditional quote unquote serial killer, right? He's not out there, he's not out there stabbing fools, not out there strangling folks,
No, he's not stabbing people up at McDonald's.
No, not dressed like Buffalo Bill out there pissing on McDonald's and stabbing employees, like my pal Buffalo Jared Revisa.
You know, that is interesting how he doesn't get labeled as a serial killer.
Right.
See, now, that would make me wonder, is there a different meaning behind the serial killer? Or are they just totally lying? You know what I'm saying? Like, was that
Sure.
like tie up just to have the word serial killer equals still fucked up, horrific shit? Or is there something behind their terminology that we don't understand?
I think it might be a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B.
So it is interesting to think about that. Again, me and other people from the Occult Rejects recently have been wondering about, you know, serial killers actually just being MK Ultra or whatever, you know, or Hitman.
Well, that's,
you know, or doing operations to wonder so the government can read the public.
Well, you're batting 3 for 3, Nick, in my opinion. Charles Manson fits all three of those categories. You know, and he's a man that actually had a family and was a bit of a businessman, and actually ran a modeling agency there on Sunset Boulevard at times. This is before his later, in between his stints in prison as an early adult, though he spent most of his life in prison. But yeah, I would argue that you hit the nail on the head there, so to speak, right on target. As far as
and where did
the multiple characters it is Charles Manson.
And where did they get a lot of people for MK Ultra?
Yeah, prison
or military.
Yeah, and he grew up there. Yeah, I mean in fact, him and there's like in the Scooby-Doo cartoons, they're always pointing to like Red Herring. You know what I mean? The character of Red Herring as the culprit. You know, there's always the standard usual suspects in any kind of crime thing. But like in Scooby-Doo, they had a comically known as the Red Herring was the character, right? Was an actual red herring. But my red herring, so to speak, or the character I like to point the direction is this dude's responsible and or involved in all sorts of things. Old Edward Wayne Edwards, an actual serial killer, right? An actual stab you, strangle you, shoot you, burn you, kind of. And these are all crimes that he was convicted of. He admitted to. I mean, he was obviously, and these were all spanning 40 some years. These 4 different murders that I'm referring to, or 5 different murders. He was ultimately was on death row to be executed, but died from the diabetes. Apparently, cardiovascular disease was his true enemy. But Charles Manson and Edward Wayne Edwards were in the Chillicothe Boys Reformatory School in I believe the late 1940s together, early 1950s. That's on a mound in Chillicothe, Ohio. That's the epicenter of the Adena Mounds, which where the Adena Mansion is, which is the namesake for the Adena Mounds. First capital of Ohio was Chillicothe. But yeah, so there's an actual serial killer, right? Edward Wayne Edwards. In relative comparison to his buddy Charles Manson, who not necessarily a serial killer, but obviously responsible for. I mean, again, I view him as more of a cult leader. So he's one of these mind controlling type of cult leader figures, but again, that's not traditionally known as what we know as a serial killer.
Now, what if it was more of something like this is taking it out there, and then I guess you'd have to start to think that this technology has been around for a long time, unless it's done in some supernatural, paranormal way. What if there is a way to actually say this guy's guilty of doing it because he programmed the motherfuckers to go do what they did?
Well, that's essentially what their argument was.
What if I had a voice to skull technology and I could actually start making people do stuff?
Well, now you're getting down some dark paths now, there, friend.
But you know what I'm saying? What if
you're getting into something that's technology that's existed for a very long time? No, what were you saying? I totally agree with you.
No, I'm just saying maybe that's how you could actually be guilty of that, because you actually you use those people as weapons.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's essentially what the argument was.
Shooting off a heat-seeking missile. You know what I'm saying? This is going to go out and kill him.
You're proposing a much larger and darker set of circumstances, because the intelligence, or what I like to call the lack of intelligence agencies here, and probably not just this country, other countries too, probably have accessed this technology through various means of warfare, intelligence warfare and whatnot, espionage warfare. But this technology's voice to skull stuff clearly existed within the intelligence agencies, arsenal since the mid 1950s, easily.
Yeah, and then like
That's
this is a little bit different.
Documented like on videotape. You know what I mean? You folks can go watch. The guy ended up getting a job at Yale and retiring from there. Jose Delgado. He's putting brain implants in bowls and controlling their activities in the mid 1950s.
Yeah, something I did want to just mention because maybe people are confused about what I was getting at. I know that Manson told these people to go do it, and that's supposedly why they did it. But I'm saying that you did not have a choice when you were told to do it. It just made you do it.
No, I get it. Yeah. Yeah.
It's a little different.
And you never really know because Manson was definitely wrapped up in a lot of intelligence stuff. And he was, him, much like Edward Wayne Edwards, were great manipulators of everyone. So they I think, they probably both view themselves as magicians. Right. And when I say manipulators, they're manipulating stuff in their idea in a magical sense, in an Aleister Crowley magical sense, because both certainly were part of these programs. These cults, their OTO offshoots, right? The process, whatever the hell Edward Wayne Edwards was associated with, which I would argue was part of a team of folks involved with the Zodiac murders, right? And actually, again, more actual kind of serial killing versus what is often attributed as the Manson stuff. But you mentioned hits. I think there's a certain degree, all of these things, there's hits that it's chaos, right? So it's chaos and mass murder, but much like in all of these instances, from the Manson killings to the Zodiac killings to the DC sniper killings back in 2002. Those two of the victims out of, I believe, the 9 victims in the DC sniper killings were witnesses to all that anthrax business that was going on, right? The stolen anthrax that was mailed to Congress folks. They were witnesses in the chain of events surrounding that. So it seems like those were hits, and the other ones were random, shootings to make it look right. Which again is the plot of the film Jack Reacher, starring Tom Cruise. Which I don't think it's the first time that reality and Hollywood have, kind of intersected into the same positions. Murdering a bunch of folks, sniper style, right? To target one person, but murdering like 5 other folks to make it look all random.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that's sometimes.
What's that?
I would think that might kind of be done with the Lady Bird Lake smiley face colors in a sense.
Sure. With that DARPA dude, son?
Yeah. Jonathan,
I'm talking your language, friend.
Yep.
But so, you got the whole Manson, the whole situation there, again, the cult stuff, the drug stuff, right? I mean, again, the process stuff, which is why you see Genesis Purich wearing the process symbol with Manson's face on a t-shirt, venerating Manson, right? Same deal with that J.J. Bryan fella who ran the Vector Gallery, who, again, back to the upper echelons of intelligence, like you mentioned with the Lady Bird Lake situation with the DARPA dude's son, DARPA executive son, who was a victim there. Well, you got once again, you got the Kissinger and Scowcroft intersection with elements of the process, both old and new, right? Bob Evans in the old process with Kissinger, the old version, or the old guard, the neo process with J.J. Bryan being Scowcroft's assistant. And again, Scowcroft, I just like to stamp this point home for folks. Scowcroft and Kissinger are 2 of the people that have stamped national security on so many things in the United States here in the last 60, 70 years, right? They are the 2 of the most integral figures in stamping shit for national security purposes. It only takes like 3 signatures, and once that happens, no one else has to know about it, right? So, I think it's a strange intersection of activities when you have these cults and those intelligence situations again. And you got folks like Charles Manson who sit in and around these activities as well. So, but the folklore around Charles Manson is pretty rampant. I'd say again, in folklore aspects. I know growing up in Appalachia, my grandmother, who was essentially my mother growing up, she would often, whenever I was in trouble, I would often get compared to either Devil's Anne's Hatfield, which was one of my cousins. She would often tell me I got the devil in me like my cousin, and it turns out is also one of my cousins, and I don't know that my grandmother knew that, even though she was been one of her cousins as well. Charles Manson, who's often, she would often refer to him, as the devil, and telling me that I was like whenever I'd act out, I'd be like the devil, and that was one of her references as the devil. So I don't know if she wants to talk, not to speak ill of her because she's obviously been deceased for many years, but I don't think she meant to talk ill of her family either, because little did she know, I don't think that Charles Manson, maybe she did know, because again, she would have been my recent discoveries of any genealogical connections between myself and the devil Charles Manson. As again, I think that's a common folklore through Appalachia, where he grew up there, and he's out of Ashland, Kentucky, in West Virginia area. So I think it's interesting that this kind of folklore of him being the devil quickly took on. And again, I'm not saying he's not the devil. I'm just saying that it's part of the folklore. It grasped on pretty quickly through Appalachia that Charles Manson was the devil. But yeah, he's a Maynard from Pikeville, Kentucky. My grandmother Vance is a Maynard from Pikeville, Kentucky. In fact, she's a double Maynard. Her parents were first cousins. So, yeah, that's right. So anyhow, very connected to Charles Manson, and I'm going to get into that here in this discussion as far as the the 6 degrees of Charles Manson. Lo and behold, even after doing this series before and making these ridiculous kind of connections, pointing out how he's connected to everybody, but also pointing out kind of the ridiculous nature of how interconnected all of these people seem to be, right? Like, it just seems to me like once you start looking at like how he's a good central figure to plotting out how interconnected a lot of activities in American history are, almost like a Forrest Gump, like a Forrest Gump style, you know what I mean? Like intersection, right? Like Forrest Gump's always kind of there. Like somehow Charles Manson is just connected to everyone and major seminal events in American history and activities, right? Like somehow Manson's just around. And again, it's the Manson murders, the Manson girls in the 70s who would later try to murder Gerald Ford. You know what I mean? These other folks who venerate Charles Manson, constituents of Genesis P-Orridge, who also apparently threatened Gerald Ford's life and George Bush #1. One of these fellows got arrested. Another one got investigated. But seems to be a real clear, speaking to like intelligence or hits or anything else like that. Like seems to be some sort of veneration of Charles Manson. Crossover between that and assassinations on U.S. presidents. I'm not sure what it's about, but there does seem to be a clear pattern of behavior there.
Yes.
Right? It's kind of weird.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to say real quick, it was from before before you start getting into your things here. You were talking about Charles Manson and thinking the Process Church, being connected. I always found it like weird that Skinny Puppy was in the Process Church, or at least they say they were. They have an album called The Process due to them being in the Process Church, and they do have a song Warlock, and it's like all like Charles Manson samples. And like I had always wondered, like it was something, because Charles Manson may have been associated with the Process Church as well.
No, I think there's a lot to that for sure. It's a good point, and that it has an intersection, in fact, with Genesis P-Orridge. So apparently, as the story goes, folks like Genesis P-Orridge's friends Boyd Rice and Michael Moynihan, all of these folks are the essentially the creators of industrial rock, right? In fact, Boyd Rice's band Non, or his industrial rock group Non, would later be the mentors to Trent Reznor. Right, 9 Inch Nails. Again, Trent Reznor, who would also lease or purchase, I believe it was a lease, the former the murder scene of the Polanski, the Tate Polanski home there in Cielo Drive, where Abigail Folger, her boyfriend Wojciech Frykowski, who was Polanski's friend from Europe, I believe France, I believe is where they knew each other from. I don't know, probably drug dealing. Who knows? Probably processed stuff over there. Who knows? Polanski and Sharon Tate and Jim Morrison's hairstylist, Jay Sebring. So, those are the folks that died there in that house. And then, was it 25 years later, 24 years later, Trent Reznor comes along with his 9 Inch Nails, which again steals the logo from Boyd Rice's NON, right? And then records that very Smiley Face Killers EP album there in his what he calls the Pig Studios, which is what was written in blood on the walls of the Manson murder. So there seems to be a very apparent and obvious connection between all these people, this veneration for Charles Manson, between the industrial rock scene, be it Reznor, who recorded there and then made a studio there in the murder scene called Le Pig Studios after the murders, to his mentor Boyd Rice and his associate, their joint associate, their Genesis Peorich, right, who again are the creators of the industrial rock stuff. And as you pointed out, were these guys were integral in the Skinny Puppy Process Church album there with Rick Rubin. So very odd circle of circumstances and things, but that's what I'm talking about. Once you start looking at Charles Manson, once you start looking at the process here, I don't want to say everyone's the process and everyone's connected to Charles Manson, but it starts getting real weird. That actually is a good question. Do I think Charles Manson wasn't just an actor? I do think in part he was an actor to some folks, but again, he played so many different sides against so many different people. He was a master manipulator. I think to some people he was an actor. And then the thing I like to compare it to is the film. It will definitely end the hippie years. Yeah, for sure. That was the goal, which is kind of depicted in the Thomas Pynchon novel and Paul Thomas Anderson film Inherent Vice. The Owen Wilson character is the saxophone player that everyone kind of forgets, like the Laurel Canyon surf rock saxophone player. That's very much I kind of look at as Charles Manson, because he was a Laurel Canyon surf rock musician. In fact, that's why I put the Beach Boys, the Beach Boys Jay-Z parody song there in the intro, because again, Manson was in tight with the Beach Boys. In fact, they recorded at least one of his songs, and a number of his other songs. They published one of his songs. A number of the other songs that he recorded with the Beach Boys have never been released. Apparently, they're still under lock and key today. But yeah, he was definitely part of that surf rock scene with the Beach Boys. Yeah. So I kind of look at maybe that's a depiction of some of that, some of what is depicted in the because there's a heavy plot line and undertones of Inherent Vice. It's about the Manson family. It's routinely referenced throughout the tale. It takes place in Los Angeles at the time of just immediately following the Manson trials. So there's clear connections to the and references to the Manson family throughout the story. I just think that the Owen Wilson character, so he's a surf rock musician from Laurel Canyon who fakes his death and goes to work for occult in the CIA, right? And these chaos upheaval movements in the Southern California late 60s, early 70s to bring an end to the hippie movement. So I do view Charles Manson in part as a character like that. But again, he was a lot of things to a lot of people because he was a master manipulator, I think. And he definitely played folks. Again, so did Edward Wynn Edwards. His friend Edward Wynn Edwards, the serial killer, he murdered folks for like 40 some years. But while doing that, he did it under the guise of being an paid FBI informant. In fact, he informed on some of his own murders and testified against some of the people that he framed. So he's framing fools while he's murking fools for 40 years and getting paid for it by the FBI. So no one wants to talk about this guy for liability purposes for these reasons, right? Because what happened was he would move around the country he'd make up these certificates of being a fake doctor and stuff. This is an actual serial killer. This is somebody far more powerful in the same kind of game as Charles Manson, but one who actually gets his hands dirty as well. That's how I view the two differences between Manson and Edwards. But Edwards, every time he moved somewhere, the FBI would tell the local jurisdiction, local PDs, hey, you guys, if this guy tells you about a crime, he's trustworthy. You can listen to him. So all of a sudden, the cops letting their guards down. This fake psychologist, doctor, or whatever he's making certificates for, is telling him like, hey, I want to inform about this murder that somebody told me about. Again, he's a psychologist, so he's playing the local cops, thinking that someone someone told him this under some sort of, mental health conditions, right? Oh, I murdered somebody, right? So these are some of the games dude would play, right?
That is wild.
But it's that's the level of manipulation Charles Manson was capable of. Again, they knew each other. They were friends. Allegedly, they were friends. But so yeah, a lot of things, a lot of folks. I think once again, the intersection of the activities surrounding these things of Manson and the process are unmistakable to me, from the days of Charles Manson to the folks that would put together the Manson files and the Manson anthology. These modern day Satanists, confirmed Satanists. These are folks that are, Genesis Peorich, his whole crew, Boyd Rice. These are all folks who were whole priesthoods in the Church of Satan and other satanic activities, much like Marilyn Manson. Same difference: priesthood in the Church of Satan, self-proclaimed member of the process. So these things seem to go hand in hand amongst this group of folks, but they all seem to circle around Manson and the veneration of Manson. And again, Manson, in large part, again, who was he? Because did he get selected for some of these things? I know one thing that Dana over there, Rotting Jules, has pointed out a number of times here recently and brought to my attention through some of her recent discoveries, is the Society of Cincinnati and the numerous families of the Society of Cincinnati being represented within the OG founding membership of the Process Church. Notably, the Astor Drayton Gadsdens, which is actually a strange intersection of a New York Society family and two South Carolina Society families. Powerful families in both chapters, but odd to find that intersection of families, and specifically odd to find them at the founding membership of the Process Church, directly from Westchester County, nonetheless, right there in New York.
Always somehow back to New York.
But from what I hear, it's allegedly not a crime to be from Yonkers. That's the rumor, at least.
Fucking New York. Yeah, I think I don't think I think he was definitely an occultist.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's why he was partially used. I think he was just like.
But was he born into these things, right? You know what I mean? Like, for example, he's descendant from basically the founding families of the founding Swedish families in America in the mid 1600s that came to Delaware. That's some of the shared lineage I have with old Chuck here, right? For example, this fellow right here, Peter Rambo is his name. This is one of mine and Chuck's shared heritage. We're closely related on this line, but this is one of the dudes who founded, one of the early Swedish families that came over to America. That's what I'm saying. So, like, is he being selected because he's from these quote unquote elite families that started America, like the representation of the Society of Cincinnati, right? He's also a McCoy, like the Hatfields and McCoys. He's a multiple McCoy. So again, me and I have like we're like cousins 5 times over. We have a lot. Yeah, he and I have a lot of heritage. That's what I'm saying. Like me and old Chuck, cousin Chuck, if you will.
Chuck.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like, is he being selected at some point in time at an early age for his, regardless of his hoodlum status and being in jail a lot as a child because he kept getting thrown out of families and robbing places and stuff like that. All that aside, is he still selected on a different path maybe now because he's more of a hoodlum, right? But is he still selected because of his heritage, right?
Yes.
I think it's a good question to ask because,
I think heritage definitely comes into play.
Well, especially when you get into these occult families, right? multi-generational cult families. It seems like, again, which are represented throughout the same cult networks. In fact, there's many have alleged that he had Manson, that is, had close associations with the actress Tuesday Weld, right? So she's apparently a high priestess, quote unquote high priestess in the occult. And again, she's of the Weld family, they started Harvard University there. The Society of Cincinnati's headquarters for the Massachusetts chapter during the war was on Weld Hill. Was it the Weld Manor, which sat on Weld Hill, which is a mound there in Brookline, Massachusetts? I believe it's Brookline, just outside of Boston. But you know what I mean? So like, again, is it these elite families, right? These quote unquote elite families, these founding families of America, that time and time again seem to be involved in these same activities. Again, it's alleged that Manson knew Tuesday Weld, through these occult connections.
Oh, see, I could see people knowing each other that way. Like that's
right.
how you end up knowing of people that like not even in your circle, maybe not even near you.
Exactly. And that's, I think, a lot of folks overlooked that. Like we just point out, that's a good point folks overlook, I think, is they're like, how would these different folks from disparate areas of society, well, how would they know each other? Well, they know each other through their quote unquote church, if you will. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Same way why, it's the same concept of folks going to a church and you have white collar folks, blue collar folks, different rungs of society, if you will, in the same church. I saw this a lot in the Mormon church, at least, right? A lot of money folks, a lot of folks with money. There wasn't a lot of folks in the middle. A lot of folks with money, a lot of folks who didn't have money, right? But, look at the same way with these occult groups. This is, you have your affluent members, you have your not so affluent members, right? And they're probably used for different purposes within the cult, Mormon church included. But what I'm saying is that this is how these people from disparate walks of life know each other, right? And I think that's often overlooked. Like, I hear that said about David Berkowitz all the time. Well, how would David Berkowitz be sitting in this location? Well, this people, how would they even know each other? Well, that's a great question. Probably through this cult business. How did David Berkowitz get into Studio 54? Right? And when he was in there, did him and Donald Trump ever high five? Like, hey, what's up, Don? Because Donald Trump used to hang out there, right? I can just picture Donald Trump, Michael Jackson, and David Berkowitz just cutting a rug and high fiving in Studio 54.
Yeah. All doing lines together off the fucking bar.
Right, all doing lines. Well, Trump's a sugar because he's a teetotaler, right? I better write a book one someday. That's a good suggestion. I appreciate it.
You really should.
I
totally agree.
Yeah, what's that?
You should write a book, man.
Should I? Okay, I appreciate it.
The life of a
garbage. What's that?
The life of a garbage can, dude.
I like it. Life of a garbage can, dude. I also like the image of Donald Trump moonwalking. That paints a great image. Maybe that's where Michael learned how to do the moonwalk, was David Berkowitz and Donald Trump in Studio 54. If we're getting into some 6 degree situations, right? Maybe David Berkowitz is next. 6 degrees of David Berkowitz. But tonight I would like to honor Kevin Bacon's more or less a make-a-wish for Kevin Bacon also. Like, it's an ode to the folklore surrounding and the Americana folklore nature of the man, the myth, the legend, Charles Manson. But this is also a joint effort here in 6 Degrees of Charles Manson. It's my make-a-wish for Kevin Bacon, who apparently wants a new patsy for the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. So that's what has inspired me to create his new patsy, 6 Degrees of Charles Manson. But I got a brief video introduction for us here.
The 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. In case you haven't heard of this game, the idea is that any actor, alive or dead, can be connected to me through our work in 6 steps or less. So, how did all this start? In 1994, I'm minding on my own business. I'm making movies. I'm trying to raise my family. And I don't remember exactly how I first heard about it, but it just kind of started to seep into my life. People would come up to me and say things like, my cousin made up a game about you. Or, dude, I'm so hungover, man. I was in a bar last night and we were playing your game. I got shit-faced and I'm a mess. I was absolutely horrified. I'm going to be the punchline of an hour-long joke. I was furious. But I stopped and I said to myself, you know, sometimes you have to confront your demons. Sometimes you got to face the beast. So I said, I'm going to go in and I'm going to look these guys in the eyes. I'm going to say, listen, fellas, you know, get another patsy, okay? You know, find somebody else.
Find somebody else, indeed. I'll make that wish for you, Kevin Bacon. 6 Degrees of Charles Manson. This is a good comment. Bacon and his wife are both Scientologists. That I don't know. That would be interesting. Bacon and his wife are both fifth cousins. In fact, they're both from Society of Cincinnati family. She's Kira Sedgwick is from I believe General Sedgwick is one of her forefathers. They're out of the Rhode Island chapter of the Society of Cincinnati. But a few years ago, they were like, "Hey, they came out and did like a press release. We didn't even know we were cousins." Yeah, okay. I'm not buying it. They also lost all their money. To be fair, and not to shit all over Kevin Bacon in the 6 Degrees game, he also lost. Well, maybe I do, but he also just for as note, he also apparently lost all of his money in the Bernie Madoff scam, which I just think it's still funny that Bernie Madoff made off with everybody's money. Right? He's just. You can tell me we don't live in a simulation. That's hilarious. Bernie Madoff made off with everybody's money.
Yeah, it's like the Matrix had a glitch.
For sure, dude. It's glitching all the time these days, apparently. They got fire tornadoes out in Los Angeles. I thought Sharknado was bad. Shark tornadoes. They got fire tornadoes out there. That's what the news was saying. Oh, but here we go. So, in 6 Degrees of Charles Manson, I also like to kind of ridiculously point out how the tenuous connections that folks make in the interwebs, conspiracy culture, if you will. You know what I mean? Like, for example, I'll just throw something out off the top of my head. I see all the time. It seems like it's getting a recent resurgence. Is the Statue of Liberty is some depiction of Lucifer or Satan or some nonsense. You know what I mean? There's always these tenuous connections made throughout the conspiracy culture in many respects. You know what I mean? Whether it's calling that, which again is the Society of Cincinnati's goddess, the goddess Columbia, which is a amalgamation of numerous goddesses, but it's not Lucifer. And there is a goddess that shares some of the same qualities as Lucifer, but Lucifer is not Satan in the first place, which again is another tenuous connection that is, is relevant to this conversation tonight for sure. Is relevant just in the sense of defining things properly, but obviously to the Protestant Church, the Lucifer contingent is different than the Satanic contingent, the Satanic wing of their 4 wings. They got Jesus, Jehovah, Satan, and Lucifer, right? So, I see a lot of these tenuous connections. So, in the same in that kind of vein of roasting that, I like to make tenuous connections myself here with 6 Degrees of Charles Manson, whereas I like to blame folks who are within 6 Degrees of Charles Manson for Charles Manson's activities, right? For example, Angela Lansbury, the actress who starred in the Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra and John Frankenheimer, right? More Satanists, right? Frank Sinatra. More connections to weird murders. Frankenheimer, that's where RFK was at for dinner. Right before he got murdered.
Say that again?
John Frankenheimer, the director's home of the Manchurian Candidate.
Okay.
RFK was there with some of the other rat packers, right? His sister was married to a rat packer, one of Frank Sinatra's buddies. I think all of the rat packers were Satanists at one point in time. Not just, Sammy Davis gets thrown out there as being the head Satanist of the group, but Sinatra's married to Mia Farrow, who's doing Rosemary's Baby. Dean Martin's got his own connections. The guy I can't think of who was married to a Kennedy. Anyway, the Rat Pack was present, and RFK was present. So was Tate and Polanski, right? Sharon Tate and her husband Roman Polanski at the dinner at John Frankenheimer's house, the director of Manchurian Candidate, where RFK was at right before he went to the Ambassador Hotel and got murdered. You know who else was present at the Ambassador Hotel that night? The Process. So,
Yo,
just
really?
yeah, just saying. Angela
Why?
Lansbury's got some weird
was their
connections. What's that?
What was their reasoning for being there? Do you know? Or?
Well, they were in Los Angeles at the time where they allegedly claimed to have left there before then. I think supposedly just conveniently right prior to then they claimed to have left. But there was numerous eyewitnesses spotting the classic robes and German Shepherd folks milling around the Ambassador Hotel. Not to mention you had folks like well, it's a different story altogether. But nonetheless, there was Sirhan was identified in an INS report as attending Process church sex orgies, right? So the numerous connections to the situation, but nonetheless, John Frankenheimer, Angela Lansbury's obviously got a score of, a Manson score of 1, right? One degree connected to Charles Manson. She signed a permission slip, and so that's like 61, I think, as Manchurian Candidate. So 67, 6 years later, she signs a certificate or a permission slip for her daughter, I believe her 14 or 15-year-old daughter at the time, to go run around with Charles Manson. She was a Manson girl. She was part of the family. And in fact, when the day that the Manson family got charged, she took her daughter, hightailed back to Ireland, and never came back again. So that's her home country of Ireland. She wouldn't head out there. But anyhow, Manson's score of 1 directly connected to Charles Manson. She signed a permission slip so that her daughter could run around with Charles Manson. So LAPD would routinely, they there was a huge file on Manson, right? But much like his pal Edward Wayne Edwards, as an informant, he gets certain protections. So if he gets picked up by one department within one wing of a department, then there's another wing from the department saying you're going to let this guy go, right? So a lot of that going on. Nonetheless, through numerous instances of patrols stopping Manson with numerous young girls, they identified Angela Lansbury's daughter as one of these young girls, and then made it an issue. So Lansbury wrote a permission slip that, as noted by the LAPD, she was allowed to be with Manson according to her mother, according to like a permission slip. Right? How crazy is that, right? So, yeah, this headline, Angela Lansbury once saved her daughter from Charles Manson's cult. You're damn right she saved her. The day they got charged, she said, we're going to Ireland, and we're not coming back. But in the ridiculous... So, obviously, before I get there, Lansbury, famous for Murder, She Wrote, right?
Oh, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, the town, the new, quaint New England tales of visiting quaint New England towns, and where a murder just seemed to happen to pop off every time Angela Lansbury's character showed up, right? So I think, this is the best way. This is, a theory that's been presented to me that I find to be the best context in which to interpret this television show, especially after knowing her connections to the Manson family, because who signs her daughter to go with Manson? Probably a member of the cult, right? You know what I mean? She's probably a member of the cult. That's why she's cool with Manson running around with her daughter, or her daughter running around with Manson. So I think what I think is the best theory that I've come across here has been presented to me that makes the most sense is Angela Lansbury's character is a serial killer in this show. And she's out there murking fools, and then she's investigating and writing novels about her own murders, right? Yeah, if you watch the show in that context, it makes a lot more sense. She's the actual killer.
And then everybody
framing fools.
That's fucked up.
What are you saying?
So everybody she pins it on is innocent.
Right. She's out there framing fools, Edward Wayne Edwards style, for the murder she's committing, and then she's making a profit off it by writing novels, dude. This is class. This is what I'm talking about. This is the devious nature of this cult. But I'm saying if she was a member of the cult, that's the activity she'd be doing, because that's what Edward Wayne Edwards was doing. For example, Edward Wayne Edwards created his own publishing house, wrote his own book of how he the metamorphosis of a criminal, how he adapted himself after being the #1 most wanted man in America on the FBI's most wanted list at the age of like 22, how he went to prison and became a new man, right? Well, that was all bullshit. So he created his own publishing house, self-published his book. It was a fake publishing house. This is the early 70s. Fake published his book, traveled America, telling everybody that he wrote this book and going on TV shows and radio stations around America, murdering fools in every city while he's doing it, apparently, according to one detective's theory that I find to be very credible. A lot of unsolved murders in the wake of Edward Wayne Edwards' visits to these towns, just saying. A lot of folks like the Cincinnati Strangler being one of them in one of my former hometowns. A series of unsolved murders that just happened to pop off when Edward Wayne Edwards is doing book tours and radio station visits and TV station visits in these towns. Again, he's booking these things himself because he's an author, right? He's an author like Angela Lansbury's character. She's out there murking fools. I'm just telling you, there's a lot of correlations between these things. And if Edward Wayne Edwards is a member of the cult and she's a member of the cult, I'm just saying, it could just be the cult bragging. This is just how they do business. They murder fools. They make an industry off of it.
Damn. Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury, possible serial killer. Possible serial killer.
What was her character? What was the character's name in that show?
Jessica Fletcher.
Oh,
Jessica
so
Fletcher.
she was the
Jessica Fletcher, the serial killer. There we go. That's what I meant to say. There we go. Yeah. So her second cousin.
That was just funny to think about, even if it's not true.
Right, and no, it is. Well, again, if you watch that show, it makes way more sense.
If I ever put it on, I'm going to think of it in that sense now.
Yeah, and it's a good show in that sense. If you look at it that way, I mean, it's a mediocre show. Otherwise, I think it makes way more sense because something ain't right about this old lady going to all these towns solving these murders. Right, something ain't right about it. It just doesn't sit right. But if you think about it, that she again. Once I came across this theory, I was like, this makes the most sense of the show. I mean, and again, given her relations to Charles Manson and a potential member of the cult, if you will, it makes the most sense to me that that's what's going on in that series. That she would write and star in a series where she's the serial killer. But her second cousin is the former Prime Minister of Australia. So thanks to that, dumb dictator of Australia, or former dumb dictator of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull. He's got a Manson score of number 3. So he's 3 degrees of Charles Manson, responsible for a lot of shitty activities in life. In fact, here's a picture of his the former Prime Minister of Australia, Malcolm Turnbull, and his second cousin, Angela Lansbury, former star of the serial killer sitcom Murder, She Wrote. Is that a sitcom? Is it a drama? I'm not sure what it was. To them, I think it was a sitcom.
I like how you said it was a serial killer.
Serial killer sitcom. To them, it is. I think it is to them, right? Like,
well, it's only serial killer if she's the one who's actually killing everybody.
Right. That's the joke, though. That's their joke. That's the cult's joke, right?
That'd be funny if it was later.
To the process, folks, it's a serial killer sitcom. Is what I'm getting.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah,
it's funny.
Pretty wild though that she would sign her daughter, right, to be like, it's cool. You can go hang out with that Manson fella. That's what I'm saying. You got to have like some level of acceptance in the cult at that point. You'll like this one. It do make sense. JJ Lansbury is a total psyop. Lansbury, well, she may have started as a serial killer too. I don't know. It's inconclusive.
I love how she came up in this. This is too funny.
Right? Yeah, she's an old bird. I forgot she'd passed. Quite honestly, she was 96 though. You'll like this one. You're familiar with the actor Danny Trejo?
It sounds familiar. Oh yes, that him?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Danny Trejo. That's not him. That's Luigi Mangione right there. There we go. Danny Trejo. Stupid pop-ups on New York Post articles. Come on, there we go. Danny Trejo, that guy. Wow, he's looking kind of rough. So he knew Charles Manson. He's got a Manson score of 1. Danny Trejo said he met Charles Manson in prison. So Trejo, native Los Angeles alien. There we go. He did some time there at Terminal Island. the former prison right off the shore there, like Alcatraz style. Yeah, Machete. That was that was his big starring role, I believe. Machete, his first big starring role. But he did some time there at Terminal Island with Charles Manson, apparently, and you know, so he's got a Manson score of 1, which I think is an interesting little intersection in life. Because again, Manson just turns out he knows all these Hollywood folk, right? And it just sheer happenstance that he happens to intersect with all these Hollywood people. And you may be thinking, well, Danny Trejo's not that Hollywood. Well, he's really not that Hollywood, but he's only Hollywood courtesy of his second cousin. So much like Angela Lansbury's second cousin, Danny Trejo's second cousin, the film director Robert Rodriguez. In fact, that Machete film was directed by Robert Rodriguez. So Robert Rodriguez here, he's not, not necessarily directly culpable of anything, but he does have a Manson score of 2. So I mean, it's way worse than my Manson score. I'm related to the guy. That's all I'm saying. My Manson score is like a 4, 5, and 6. 4, double 5, and a 6. But these guys got a 2. So watch out. But Robert Rodriguez, of course, we were talking about Scientology stuff earlier. This guy's high on my list of secret Scientologists. Quentin Tarantino, right? That's his. These two are pretty as they appear in this photograph together. They are very much inseparable in their production and film productions. They've done a couple joint ventures together. I believe Rodriguez has Tarantino to thank for the start of his career. So you got Tarantino here with a Manson score of 3, and then he makes this ode to Manson, retelling the entire kind of Manson narrative, really. But have you seen this Once Upon a Time in Hollywood?
I don't think I saw that. No,
it's not a bad movie. It's not a terrible one. I mean, it's interesting. I'll give it that much. It's Leonardo DiCaprio. He's kind of playing like a. I honestly think so. Tarantino did instill a lot of actual lore around the Manson families. I mean, the Manson murders are the backdrop, and the Manson family are the backdrop of this film.
Oh, okay. No, I did see this. I just don't remember. This was the Manson one, right?
Well, yeah. So they're a big part. I mean, it's about DiCaprio and his stuntman Brad Pitt, but they keep interacting with the Manson family, right?
Yeah.
They live next door to the Tate Polanski house. The murder scene that Trent Reznor would later record some creepy fucking music at in his little pig studios. Boyd Rice's friend, Genesis P-Orch, the guy on the cover art.
They also did end up on the ranch. I can't remember for what reason. But.
Yeah, Spawn Ranch.
Yeah.
Yep, same movie. They put a lot of the act that was actually, they put a lot of the actual lore into that. You'll see Bruce Lee on here. Bruce Lee was in tight with Jay Sebring and not Abigail Folcher and Sharon Tate. So, he was in the film. Like that's what I'm saying. Tarantino put some actual Manson family, not even very commonly known Manson family lore into this film. And that's the reason why I enjoy it. Because when I saw Bruce Lee, I'm like, oh, he went deep on the Manson tale. Because I was familiar with, like for example, I don't know how it was an acting thing or what, but he was the personal martial arts, trainer for Sharon Tate and Jay Sebring, who were a thing before Sharon Tate got with Roman Polanski, which is also captured in the film. The weird love triangle between Sebring and Tate and Polanski, because they all live in the same house. So I thought Tarantino did a great job of that. But Tarantino, my high candidate for secret Scientologist in my book. And he's got a Manson score of 3, and he does this weird kind of retelling of the Manson family. I don't know, probably something more to all the reason why they did that like that. But he does include some of the classic, more deeper cut Manson lore in here, and I think that's interesting. But yeah, I think DiCaprio is kind of like so you've seen the movie. He goes over and does those spaghetti westerns, right?
Yeah, and then I think they started to like kind of tank, right?
Right. So those spaghetti westerns, the only there's some other actors that did it, but the actor most known for going over there in the 60s at that same time, and I think DiCaprio might actually be representing his character might be representing that is Clint Eastwood.
Oh, wow.
So I often wonder about how some of these people who are still alive, right? Lansbury just died, but some of these older Hollywood, folks who are still alive that have connections to the cults. And this is the reason why a lot of this stuff is still under wraps, because of these people who are still alive like that. But I often wonder, is DiCaprio supposed to be Clint Eastwood, right? Because another deep cut that was included, a character included in the film, not necessarily, they didn't really capture the whole story, but he was included there briefly. Steve McQueen, the actor Steve McQueen, who took Bob Cocaine Evans' wife from Ally McGraw, right around this same time. But also was apparently supposed to be at the Tate Polanski house the night of the murders. McQueen famously said he met some lady hooked up with some lady at a gas station whenever on the way there. Met some lady at a gas station on the way there and hooked up with her at her house instead of going to the party. Which, probably a believable tale for, Steve McQueen, A-list actor at the time, right? But nonetheless, he could have been murdered that night. Interestingly enough, another common factor between myself, Steve McQueen, and Charles Manson, we're all distant relatives of one another. Back to Pikeville, Kentucky. My wing of the McQueen family we dropped ours to just Queen. It went from Mac Queen to Mick Queen to just Queen here in America. But same family, same region. I'm just saying, Manson and McQueen's families knew each other before that fateful day in August of '69 there. So back to these, seemingly, strange connections that Charles Manson seems to have to all sorts of things. But I don't know. I just think there's a lot of odd stuff that was captured in this film, and it's odd that Tarantino is the one that did this film.
You didn't happen to check if your boy John Travolta had any degrees from Charles Manson, did you?
Oh, that's a good question. If I can't come up with one by the end of the show, I'll definitely have one for next time.
I see somebody asked in the chat, and I was like, "Oh, that's good." I don't know if they know because did you met John Travolta or what? But
yeah. Well, I one right off the top of my head is John Travolta starred in the film Devil's Reign with and Anton LaVey served as the technical director. That's probably around 1972. So Anton LaVey knew Charles Manson. In fact, Squeaky Fromm was one of the Manson girls danced in LaVey's nightclub there in San Francisco, and LaVey's pal Kenneth Anger was his little boy toy was Bobby Beausoleil, Charles Manson. So there's a connection right there for you. So that gives the old Johnny T a Manson score of what, 4?
And there could be other ones that you don't even.
He's worse than I am. I'm still better than John Travolta's doing. We're tied, I guess. He and I both have Manson scores of 4.
It's a social credit score.
It's like it should be a social credit score. Do you have a Manson score of 3 or less? You should be eliminated from society.
You should be investigated.
You should be investigated for all sorts of crimes. So then you got we heard that we talked about the Beach Boys and the kind of the connections to the Hollywood. So Manson's got them music connections too with the Beach Boys, right? They did the music together. So Mike Love, remember the Beach Boys? He's the cousin of the Wilson brothers, right? The 3 Wilson brothers. It's the 3 Wilson brothers. Their friend Al Jardine and their cousin Mike Love. Mike Love has got a Manson score of 1, right? He recorded music with Manson. They in fact published some of that music. Dennis Wilson, his cousin, was one of the financiers of the Manson family, and the Manson girls and Manson lived there for all of the summer of '68, apparently. The same summer that RFK got murdered and stuff. They're living at Dennis Wilson's house. Dennis Wilson's, I'm sorry, what's that?
I always thought that was a weird tie, the Beach Boys.
The Wilsons? Oh, yeah, super weird, right? Again, it wasn't a small, like, in passing either. Like, there's a lot of, you can, like, Neil Young, I'll bring him up next, right? He's our next candidate for 6 Degrees of Charles Manson. He's got more of an in passing type of situation with Manson, but not the Beach Boys. Not when you got numerous recording sessions with him. Not when you're publishing some of the music he wrote. Like, there's an actual on the Phil Spector, the guy I like to call the music, Hollywood's music, Bob Cocaine Evans, whereas Bob was the head of like the Hollywood movie process side, right? Phil Spector was the head of the Laurel Canyon process music side, right? He's the guy that published all the Laurel Canyon weird scenes inside the canyon stuff from Dave McGowan. All of the folks, all the studio musicians that were the actual bands playing on these albums that McGowan describes in his tale. Well, those were all Phil Spector in his wall of sound, his quote unquote wall of sound, right? So Phil Spector is kind of like, opposite from Bob Evans, I think, in those regards. But, so there's an album produced by Phil Spector of the Beach Boys that includes a Charles Manson written song. So it's, these are very, very bizarre connections, right?
I agree.
So the Beach Boys' nephew, Mike Love's nephew, Kevin Love, NBA player Kevin Love, formerly of the Cleveland Cavaliers, right? So he's got a Manson score of 2. He played on the Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron James for 4 years, right? And then you got LeBron James' son, who's also there in Los Angeles today as a star for the Lakers, like his dad. He's got a Manson score of 4. So apparently going to Diddy parties and having a horrible mid-range jump shot are not the LeBron James's only problems, senior and junior here. They got Manson scores of 3 and a Manson score of 4. They got bigger problems.
They got bigger
problems.
Oh God!
They thought their terrible mid-range jump shot was their biggest problem. Bronny was shooting like 27%. I think his dad's like at 30. These are not NBA numbers, right? Not traditional. Michael Jordan would put that to shame. And these guys are their mid-range jump shots. They thought that was their problem. They got Manson scores of 3 and 4. That's their real problem.
Manson full, LeBron 0.
Is that a comment? Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh God.
That's great. So yeah, Neil Young's another one, right? So he has more of a passing relationship with old Chuck, right? With my cousin Charles, if you will. The he definitely hung out with him, Laurel Canyon. He definitely jammed with him. They definitely, played music, spoke about music, wrote music together, right? They were definitely friendly. They speaks of him in a favorable manner, right? Neil Young, that is. One of those quotes here that he's quoted as saying here is, let me pull one up here for you. Stand by, please. Young, here we go. Here's one. Young stated, he was an angry man, but brilliant. Wrong, but stone brilliant. He sounds like Dylan when he talks. So obviously, may not be the most favorable review, but given other folks' reviews of their interactions with Charles Manson, it's pretty positive, So I agree with Lisa, though. A Southern man does not need him around. It's according to Leonard Skinner, at least. Are you familiar with the background of Neil Young there, Nick?
No, not really.
Are you familiar with a fellow by the name of Rick James?
Yeah.
Looks like this. At one point in time in his life.
Rick James, bitch.
Rick James, bitch. Yep. Well, there's Rick James on the right with his Chappelle parody there, satire on the left.
It's like fuck your couch.
All right. Oh, that's some of the best comedy. I mean, it still plays to this day. You know what I mean? Especially the Rick James bits.
That shit is hilarious.
The Charlie Murphy stories they captured there on the Chappelle Show. But before the Chappelle Show's fame, here's Rick James right here with his buddy. Oh, I got something playing here in the background. Give me 1 second. You stop that machine. All right. Here's Rick James on the left with his buddy Neil Young on the right. Back from their days in Toronto, Canada, previous to Laurel Canyon. This is the early 60s, circa 1962, maybe. The Mina Birds was their band. They had a rock band in Toronto named the Mina Birds with their 2 lead guitarists here, Neil Young and Rick James, bitch. I believe he officially changed his name to that.
Wow. And what were they called again?
The Mina Birds, right? Kind of a weird name. MINAH, Mina Birds. So somebody in Laurel Canyon or in some sort of intelligence operation was like, you two fellas, you're going to Hollywood. Because the rest of the band, I don't think they made it out of Toronto. But nonetheless, these fellas, they they became prominent figures in the Laurel Canyon rock scene, right? But they knew each other beforehand. They're in Toronto, part of the same band. Again, previous to, this probably the early onset of the cocaine days, right? This is probably the late stage cocaine Rick James right here, right? He died not that long after this, I believe. So Rick James has got a Manson score of 2. And obviously here he is on the set of the Dave Chappelle show with Dave Chappelle playing Rick James. Thereby Dave Chappelle's got a Manson score of 3. A lot of talk about Scientology tonight. Here we go again. Dave Chappelle, Nation of Islam, Scientologist by virtue of being a Nation of Islam, because Louis Farrakhan, he passed recently. He joined the Galactic Federation, but he signed everybody up about 15 years ago for get yourself about 11 years ago. Get yourself some Scientology. So Dave Chappelle there, just down the road from me, about 10 miles, 15 miles. Dave Chappelle has set up a new empire. Scientology, the Nation of Islam, and their motherships have invaded the town of Yellow Springs, Ohio. Here's the headline from Fox Business. Dave Chappelle's real estate empire helped restore Ohio, comedian says. It's a small college town, very granola, hippie culture. His father, I believe Dave Chappelle's father, was a professor at the university there, Antioch University. I believe it's a liberal arts college. So the dude's got some roots there, but he has spent a lot of money in revamping. He's got a comedy club. He's got some other sort of maybe a smoke shop or club down there in downtown. Apparently there's a lot of money going in there. So this is not a inaccurate article by helping restore the place. He certainly has done that. However, the town of Yellow Springs, Ohio, the whole town, all of them, they got a Manson score of 4. So they're equivalent to Travolta and myself, apparently. So they're doing okay, I suppose. But nonetheless, like I said, Chappelle basically is more or less taking over that town. So I'm going to go ahead and this is the welcome sign. Again, kind of a granola hippie town. This is the welcome sign. You come in the town. It's literally, it just says Springs and it's in yellow. For those folks who can't see the image listening to this later. The whole town, Manson score of 4. What is this? Mina bird equals Ibis bird equals Anzu bird equals Phoenix. Well, that's interesting. I did not know that, Mercy Choke. Thank you. Nick, welcome back. Did you see that? This is the welcome sign to Yellow Springs, Ohio, that Chappelle's taking over. The whole town now has a Manson score of 4. Because Chappelle's taking it over there. So by virtue of Chappelle being there, anyone he's interacted with, he's a Manson score of 3. Anyone he's interacted with is a Manson score of 4.
Oof.
So I'm awarding the whole town a rating of 4.
Oh, that's serious.
Right. It's aggressive.
Yeah.
I mean, he really has brought some a lot of money. He's got a comedy club there. You know what I mean? He put a lot of money into that town. I remember that town being pretty run down. I mean, much like a lot of this area, it's not necessarily Appalachia, but it got the opioid heroin problem from Dayton, much like it got sandwiched in between the heroin problem of Dayton and the opioid problem of Appalachia, basically. Appalachia. That's the diagnosis I give Yellow Springs. So, for what it's worth, the Nation of Islam, Scientology, ancient alien cargo cultists don't seem to like drugs too much, so that's probably a positive thing for the town. Largely anti-drug, especially the Scientologists. Well, the Nation of Islam too, but you know what I mean? Like they're very much like the Mormons, the bodies at temple type of deal. So they're very more so with the Scientologists. They love their vitamins and they call it the rundown. And it's basically just taking a bunch of vitamin B and niacin and just flushing shit out. Like we're just going to flush everything out. Go sit in a sauna a bunch. Sit in the sauna, eat these vitamins. We're going to flush all the toxins. I live about 20 minutes from Yellow Springs. All types of people there for sure. Definitely all types of people. Some of those people are ancient alien and cargo cultists. And all of those people have a Manson score of 4, courtesy of Dave Chappelle. And can't forget this fella, the guy from the cover image, tonight's cover art, old Genesis P. Orich, Mr. Neoprocess, co-founder of industrial music himself, Mr. Throbbing Gristle. That was his band. This thing right here is this interesting character.
Throbbing Gristle. I think Skinny Puppy has a called Puppy Gristle.
Well, that's probably where they get it from. Like I said, he was there at the, according to members of Skinny Puppy, he was present for the Process album there in Malibu, Skinny Puppy's album. So probably an homage again. Between him and his pal Boyd Rice, right? Boyd Rice, this fella on the right here, Genesis P. Orich in the middle, Boyd Rice, and I forget this fella's name here. This little Hitler-looking fella, little Shitler-looking fella on the left. I don't recall his name. This character is Genesis P. Orich, and this is Boyd Rice. Boyd Rice would threaten to kill Gerald Ford, and get arrested for handing Mrs. Ford, Betty Ford, I believe a head of a goat on a silver platter, maybe something like that. The skull of a goat. Pretty interesting character. Satanist. Knew Charles Manson. Communicated with him, one of his confidants there while he was in prison. This fellow here, Boyd Rice, and Genesis P. Orich, right? And his and their buddy Michael Moynihan, not pictured here, Michael Moynihan. Michael Moynihan and Boyd Rice again, Boyd Rice was the guy who had the industrial group Non, which was the mentor to Reznor's 9 Inch Nails, or NIN, NON, and NIN, right? And the logos are clearly a derivative of one another, meaning Reznor's is derivative of Boyd's logo, right? This is Tracy Twyman's old mentor, Boyd Rice. Tracy Twyman's old mentor. But Boyd Rice and Moynihan introduced industrial rock, again, leaders in the foundation of industrial rock here between these two, and again, Moynihan not pictured. Boyd Rice and Moynihan moved to Denver, Colorado in the 80s and inserted the industrial music scene there. And again, very processy and neo-Nazi stuff going on with this whole group. I think this is more of a tenuous connection, but certainly one I like to propose to folks of the interwebs as being possibly true is the Columbine kids were said to have been influenced by industrial rock and neo-Nazis, right? Well, if you're looking for an intersection, and they lived in Jefferson County, Colorado, right? Same county, just outside the city, and Columbine sits just outside the city of Denver, in the same county of Jefferson County, right? These guys introduced Satanism, neo-Nazism, and industrial music to that area. I often wonder, what is the degrees of separation between these characters and the Columbine kids? And I'm not just saying Klebold and Harris, but their whole group. There was other members of that group that were arrested there that day. Seems like, but those guys got influenced somewhere, right? They got influenced somewhere, and again, these are the modern day underlings of Charles Manson, the heads of the neo-process, the self-proclaimed heads of the neo-process folks, right? The priests of Church of Satan, right? They're checking a lot of boxes here, right? And again, somebody influenced those Columbine kids with the neo-Nazi Satanism, industrial rock stuff. I'm just saying, Boyd Rice, Michael Moynihan being the folks who introduced that into the Denver area, being the integral figures that they are in the neo-process movement, and directly connected to old cousin Chuck here, my cousin Chuck here. I think it's an interesting confluence of activity, to say the least, and one I'd like to propose to folks on the interwebs may in fact be connected.
Chuck.
Old Chuck. So, on that same note, and this has nothing necessarily to do with Chuck, but it does bring us back to where old Chuck used to spend a lot of his time at the Chillicothe Boys Reformatory in his younger years. Just north of there in Columbus, Ohio, about 30 miles north of there, is the home of a character that's often tossed around, probably not enough in conspiracy cultures, Les Wexner. Jeffrey Epstein's only client, right? Gets a lot, doesn't get enough coverage, in my opinion. But this is one of the Columbine shooter's mothers, Sue Klebold. Her grandfather was a fellow by the name of Leo Yasnoff. Right here, see, highlighted right here. Leo from Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs. Leo Yasnoff. Would you believe Leo Yasnoff is from Columbus, Ohio, and it was a major Jewish figure in Columbus, Ohio, to the point where the synagogue that Les Wexner attends and buried his mother, had her funeral, is the Leo Yasnoff synagogue. Make that one make sense to me, Nick. As far as all these degrees of separation go, make that one make sense to me. Bella Wexner, the board of trustees and the staff of the Leo Yasnoff Jewish Community Center of Greater Columbus mourn the passing of Bella Wexner. I said synagogue. I mean Jewish Community Center, but it's where all the moneyed folks of the Jewish faith meet there in Columbus, including Les Wexner, including having stuff related to his ceremonies, or some sort of memorials for his mother that passed, named after the Columbine kid's great grandfather. Make that make sense. It's a pretty wild one, right?
Yeah, that's weird.
Right?
Yeah, that's bugged out.
Now, if I am correct, and there wasn't,
imagine that. Imagine like that shit actually just happened by accident, and like somehow the people involved even noticed that, and they're like, "Yo, that's kind of fucked up."
Look, dude, I'm willing to entertain those ideas.
Get that to happen.
Right, I'm willing to entertain some of those ideas, but not everything. Not everything can be a coincidence in the same regard. But I am willing to entertain the possibility coincidences may exist. I'm just saying, I don't know. This is a tough one for me, even if it is a coincidence, right? It's like, make that make sense.
Yeah.
No, and if I am correct in my assumptions that the influence of the Columbine situation can be directly traced to Charles Manson, that would give Leo Yasnoff here, who's in a Mormon kind of baptism of the dead things, retroactively acting on the situation kind of deal, right? That would give Leo Yasnoff here like a Manson score of 6. It's not good. It's not good for a deceased Jewish man. It's not a good look, especially when you are hosting Les Wexner at your establishment. Les Wexner's a fine, upstanding citizen. I'm sure he's done nothing wrong in financing the illicit activities of Jeffrey Epstein. And actually, I would give Wexner a Manson score of 7, maybe even 6 himself, depending on how you look at it. That's weird, right? Again, Manson's connected to everybody, including, like I said, the McCoys. He's a McCoy from Pikeville, Kentucky. He's also a Maynard from Pikeville, Kentucky, which makes him. And again, he and I are both descended from old Peter Rambo here, one of the original Swedish folks. Again, we have closer connections. This is just where that line goes back to in America. But nonetheless, cousin Chuck here was kind of shocked. I never really looked at all this genealogy before, but on paper, his father is this Colonel Walker Henderson Scott fella, who again hails from Pike County, Kentucky. Pike County, Kentucky. And you start seeing a lot of my heritage here. You got the McCoys, you got the where's the Maynard here? Oh, there's the Maynard, Rebecca Maynard right there. So these are my connections with old Chuck here through the Pike County connections. I was kind of shocked to learn that, but again, there almost has to be some context of why he became who he was, and you know what I mean. And the thing that makes the most sense to me, especially with these multi-generational occult families, is that it's in the blood. That's the reason why he got picked. It's in the blood. You know, it's who he's from.
Yeah.
Right. Again, their society of Cincinnati folks wrapped up in these. Again, it's the same. He's got some heritage there too. He's done. I would never assert he's directly a member, but he's certainly of some of those families. So again, we're talking about these same kind of same folks in society, right? Like it's interesting. And again, he's not so like the Hatfields and McCoys. He's not a direct member of that wing of the McCoys, but those McCoys come from this guy, William McCoy Sr. So, and Chuck's, so like Randolph McCoy, the main leader of the faction of the Hatfield McCoy feud, the McCoy side, that's this dude's Randolph would be this dude's grandson. Now, Chuck's from two different lines from this guy that aren't on the Randolph line. Nonetheless, it's all the McCoy family from Pikeville, Kentucky. But this, you can see that how intermingled this gets there in Pikeville. I'll just type in Vance. We get 9 Vances in this tree right here from this same guy, right? These are people from Abner Vance that we're looking at here with the Vances. And again, you get Brownings. Those are more of my people, the Brownings, the Browning Vances. So, a lot of crossovers there for me within the tree of Chuck. You get all these Maynards, 52 different Maynards. So, again, I got a Chuck score. I got a Manson score of 4, 2 5s, and a 6. I just think that this to me explains the most of maybe not only why Chuck was selected for whatever he was selected for and became what he became, but also why it's still like it took such, became such a part of American folklore so quickly, right? Not just the devil aspects and the stories of Appalachia, but the lasting power and just the name Charles Manson. It just seems to have heavy connotations to meaning a lot of different things to a lot of different folks. But I just think that maybe part of that is the, some sort of incidental nature of American folklore. But I also think it's something maybe more to that since he's from the families that started America. Again, the Maynards were some of there's 4 Maynard boys. They were all brothers. They were some of the first folks west of the Appalachian Mountains, right? They were pioneers. So he's from 2 of them. I'm from 3 or 4 of them. I don't remember now. I think 3. And we're from 2 of the same ones. But nonetheless, these are families that started America, right? So I'm saying, like, is it incidental that he remains in the folklore, or is it something more to that? Because he's literally of the families, the guy that started the first Swedish immigrant to America and Delaware there, Rambo, he's a multiple Maynard like myself. These started west of Appalachia for America, right? Like, I just think there's more to it, to the lasting power and the folklore surrounding, the Americana nature that is the tale of Charles Manson. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
What do you think? Why do you think he's so popular? Because he is, right? And again, maybe not for the right reasons. Because again, he's not necessarily a serial killer, but as we pointed out before, he's definitely known as a serial killer.
I think it kind of goes back to, like, in some sort of way, selective people are involved in all of this stuff anyway.
Right.
Like, I might even be like kind of like a cheesy answer to it. It's a little bit more deeper than that. I just don't know how to, like, get into all of it. But I do think when it comes to, like, magic or the occult, but then even, then you gotta start throwing in 3-letter agencies that are involved. I think it's just one small little community, kind of.
Right. I think so too.
The sense, like, and people, how would I even explain this? Like, people may not even be involved in, like, the same club, but they know that the only reason they're even that important is because of the same reason this person is.
Yeah, it's like the Elks Club versus the Lions, the neighboring town's Lions Club, maybe, or something like that.
Yes, yeah,
and then you throw on the Rotary for a third faction. I think that's a good way to look at it, and I kind of look at it the same way. Like, I almost look at it like, almost like, well, it's like a family feud, right? I mean, it literally is like, as I'm pointing out, all the even the familial connections, right? Like, he's selected because it's a family feud, right? Like, and in that family feud, like, it's like the movie Star Wars, right? in the movie Star Wars, if you didn't have the Skywalker family being a bunch of dicks, the whole galaxy would not get blown up. There wouldn't be planets getting blown up. Folks wouldn't get stabbed with fucking lightsabers. There'd be nothing, there wouldn't be nothing's everything's getting blown up because the Skywalker family is running around being a bunch of dicks. And I look at it the same way, right? This is all one big family, whatever you want to call it, the actual Manson, his family, right? He called it the family, or the Process Church, they call it the family, or the genealogy I just pointed out, where he's literally part of, connecting families, right? Like these people are familially connected. Like I said, the epicenter of activity of the Tate Polanski murders, I'm related to both McQueen and Manson, and it all goes back to Pikeville, Kentucky, right? So, or Logan, West Virginia, and right across the river, same general geographic location, right? We drew an imaginary line in between the two spots, same spot, but nonetheless, is what I'm saying. They're part of the same family, so it's just like one big family feud. And you put all these founding families of America, these society families, they're all interconnected. It's all one big family. So if it weren't for the Skywalkers running around being a bunch of dicks, blowing everything up, I don't think folks would have a lot of problems. And that's the way I kind of look at these feuds between these cults and folks like Manson.
Yeah,
because you had Anakin, right? Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, right? For folks not familiar with the lore and the comparisons I'm making, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, the twins that are the sons of Anakin, right? You know what I mean? They're the ones that are really creating all these problems, right? You know what I mean? Then you got the other one. You got Leia has that kid. The other one that's got a lightsaber. Dude, they're all getting lightsabers. They're all stabbing each folks. They're cutting folks up. They're blowing shit up. They're creating a lot of fucking terrorism in these stories. Right? It's the same chaos terrorism I'm saying these other families are creating, like the Skywalkers. They're being a bunch of dicks. So they stop being a bunch of dicks, wouldn't be so many problems.
It's just right? On Star Wars.
Yeah, right. Oh shoot.
Just the Skywalkers being a bunch of dicks.
Skywalkers are being a bunch of dicks, man. They are lightsaber terrorists. There we go. Lightsaber terrorists. This guy, Pete Thomas knows what I'm talking about. Well, Nick, I appreciate you joining me, bud, to get a little GCD. Do you got any closing statements here on the 6 Degrees of Charles Manson? The Make-A-Wish for Kevin Bacon?
No. I'm still shocked about Angela Lansbury.
Angela Lansbury. AKA Jessica Fletcher, the serial killer.
That made my night on the show for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, that and figuring out, Star Wars. It's been solved.
Right. Yep. The Skywalkers are a bunch of dicks.
Skywalkers being a bunch of dicks.
Solved.
Yeah. Thank you very much for having me on. That was fun. It was definitely a good time as always. Real quick, I guess I'll just plug the show again.
I'll say, what do you got going on the Occult Rejects? I know you got a couple things lined up. We got a Friday's discussion with Ron from New England. That should be pretty good.
Yes, yeah. And that, tomorrow I won't be going live. I was going to promote a live tomorrow, but I can't go live because I got a strike. So, the Occult Rejects, all major podcasts, BitChute, Rumble, YouTube, and the Occult and occultresearchinstitute.org is the website. Check it out. It's free.
Nice. Yep. I got some work on there. It's definitely worth checking out. I'll go ahead and make my shameless plug on your Occult Rejects Institute there. And we got some stuff coming up on the Occult Rejects. I'm joining you for some conversation with Headless Giant coming up, talking some that's right. Current conspiracy theory topics. And then we got our Friday's discussion where we just have a kind of a laid back conspiracy culture, whatever's on our mind conversation with our guests this week on Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern time with Ron from New England. And if folks from the interwebs are not familiar with Ron, Nick, myself, and Ron have done 7 or so Idaho 4 podcasts.
Yeah.
Great discussions there. Great insight from you and Ron both on those topics. I've definitely enjoyed those conversations with you all. But Ron's a character. Ron's what I like to call a classic small town New England character. As a fellow New Englander myself, I appreciate the character that is built in the small towns of New England and the interesting environments folks live in, winters and whatnot through there, and kind of very much still very rural in many parts of New Hampshire and my bootleg home state of Vermont, very rural, secluded mountain towns that, you don't have a lot of services and relying upon a lot of stuff from the outside, a lot of towns that stick together. And I just think Ron's got that classic small town New England character, but I definitely enjoy his views on a lot of things, and definitely recommend folks check that one out on Friday. Like I said, myself, Nick, we do our Fridays at 9 p.m. So definitely good stuff.
Oh,
certainly I enjoy it.
Another thing too, we will be recording more of that Program to Kill. I don't think I'll be streaming it live on YouTube because I got in trouble last time.
Yeah, I think we derailed on the talk of the how do I say
it? You know what? Tell you the truth, as long as we don't bring that up again, actually, it would actually be fine. Yeah.
It should be good.
So people can catch that, I think, on the 6th. I did ask you, right? Because I remember I was trying to think there was one person of the group that I think I forgot to ask. The 16th, I had scheduled for Julia. I don't know if I told you that or if it's Headless that I forgot to ask.
This all sounds like brand new information, but
oh, okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, I booked her. I forgot to ask somebody that was there last time before I did it. So sorry if I just sprung it on you. Oh, we lost him too. Starlink and the Gremlins. All right. Well, if he doesn't come back, I guess I'll wrap up the show. Oh no, we'll just keep going live until he comes back. Oh shit. Don't know what to do about that, JJ. So yeah, the Occult Rejects next week, 16th, I think. Yeah. We will be going live again, I think, for more of Program to Kill. And that will be a bunch of us. That should be
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, but check your six. Look in that garbage can, 'cause you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.